Hello everyone, it's Becky here from Ivy's Corner, back again to do another little bit of tangling with you. So today I'm going to draw a Zentangle HQ tangle called Waybop, which you might already know of. It's a fun one in its own right. It looks really fun and you can add lots of detail and embellishment to it, or you could use it as a string. There's all sorts of possibilities with Waybop. So I'm going to dive straight in. I've got my pen, my pencil and my tortillon here, my 2-inch square tile. This is just Fabriano Tiepolo paper, which I've cut myself. I'm going to pick up my pencil to begin with, and I'm going to draw a sort of a little string just to start. I am going to do an orb that's reasonably large in the centre, like so, just as a bit of a guideline for me. And that's all I'm going to do with the pencil. So I'm going to grab my pen. I'm using a Micron PN today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be drawing some petal shapes that kind of come off of this central orb that I've drawn. And I want them to be reasonably evenly spaced, but I'm thinking about them in sort of pairs. So I want there to be an even number of petals that I'm drawing here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just draw these fairly large petals spaced around this orb in the centre, a bit like a flower, I guess. My orb isn't obviously not perfectly circular. My petals aren't the same shape either. It's fine. I'm not worried about it. Really, they're just there as like a guideline, I suppose. So there I have my 8 petals. Now you could do different numbers of them. It's just you want to make sure that there's an even number. So I've got 8 here. Now the first step for Waybop, well the next step for Waybop after drawing these petals, also I should say you don't have to do them around this orb, it's just I like to do it to kind of give me a guideline of where to place them. But the next step after this one is to think about our petals as being in pairs, and then I'm going to link them together. So I'm actually going to link, I sort of drew them in pairs like this, but I'm going to link these two, so this is going to become my new pairing. So I'm going to join these two together from the bottom with a curved line like so. And I'm going to do that with all of them as we go around. So making sure that each kind of consecutive group, I'm joining one after the other. So I've joined this one, so this one will be paired with the one next to it, like so. So there are my pairs of petals. Now once I've drawn this kind of loop here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be joining the tops of my petals, but I'm going to do it in sort of the other pairings, like the other way of pairing them together. So obviously I've paired this one with this one here, but the next thing I'm going to do is pair this one with this one. So rather than, so like the left hand one of my previous pairing becomes the right hand petal in my new pairing. And I'm going to join them together by adding a C curve from the top of this petal to the top of this petal. So just bringing my pen around like so to loop them together, and turning my tile and just repeating that step for each pair. And this kind of does then become almost like a little tangle in its own right. You could just have this as a fun sort of little tangle if you wanted to. The next thing I'm going to do, the next stage would be to aura these outer curves that we've created here. So around the outside of your petal and the line that you've just drawn, beginning at this first curve we drew. So I'm going to keep my aura lines fairly even, like so, and just aura around each of these sort of circular shapes that we've created. I'm just ignoring my string line at this point. It doesn't really have a purpose any longer, and will soon disappear when we start to add shading. So taking it nice and slow. And again, you can leave it like this. You could shade it a little bit like Huggins, where things disappear underneath each other. You could shade it so that this sort of section was disappearing into like a hole. and ink these in. That would probably look pretty cool. But actually what I'm going to do is, following the kind of the traditional Zentangle HQ pattern, is just to add another aura around these bottom curves here. So I'm going to aura similar distance around these bottom curves, nice and slowly, creating these sort of ribbons, these bands. Like so. And that's the fourth one, like that. Again, you could leave it here, but I'm going to move ahead with the next section, which is to join this band that we've created at the bottom with the one on the other side. So like another loop here. Now you can have a play around with this and create all sorts of shapes, different shapes if you want to. I think what I'm going to do is see what happens if I almost sort of bring it into a little heart shape, like so. So I'm bringing it down and up, and then I'm just going to flatten this top off, making sure that I'm just joining together the right sort of the bottom section with the bottom section over here. And last section, you could do a little heart if you wanted to. There we go, so those are all linked together. And then the final step is just to link these outer curves here at the bottom underneath. So I'm going to continue my line underneath, holy aura underneath the line that's created there, turn my tile and just repeat those steps. So that we have little interlinking hoops and circles that kind of link within each other. Now you can add some embellishments to this if you want to with pen, but I'm going to go ahead and shade them straight away. So I'm going to just add some graphite anywhere that my lines or my ribbons disappear underneath their neighbours, just to emphasise the over and the under that we've created when we've drawn our pattern. Now this is, I think I mentioned before, you could use this. This got lots of potential. You could do this really big and use it as like a string to fill these other little spaces that we have. It's actually not dissimilar to the free lesson that I have available on my website. If you go to ivies-corner.com, there is a section on freebies where you can take a look at my free lessons. I have a free intermediate tile lesson which has rattoon as a string, which is not a dissimilar tangle. It has kind of a similar way of over and under creating these interesting kind of shapes, and within that tangle we actually we use rattoon as a string, so you might be able to adapt that lesson and have a go at it using Waybop as a string. That would be a really interesting thing to have a try with. I've just added a little bit of extra graphite on these points here, but I'm going to go back in and just soften my pencil with my tortillon. It's not the sharpest of, or the freshest of tortillons, it's fairly old. So I'm just being gentle and trying to make sure that I don't overshoot with my softening and keeping things within the lines here. Just going to soften these little bits here. You will find, if you have a well-used tortillon, that you probably have a fair amount of residual graphite. Oh, I've missed one here. There we go. You might find you have some residual graphite from previous projects. So sometimes you can just make use of what you already have on your tortillon, especially if you're adding in little finishing touches. But we are nearly there with this one. You can still see my little initial string line a little, but obviously if you were to go ahead and add some embellishments or additional patterns to this particular tangle, those would quite quickly vanish. There we go. There we have Waybop. I hope you enjoyed this one. This is a really fun tangle. I think it can be quite challenging, but with a little practice, it looks really effective. I hope you enjoyed it. So do like and subscribe if you did. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to check me out on all the usual social media pages, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. I'm on YouTube Shorts as well. Head on over there, and I would love to hear from you in the future and let me know what else you'd like to see me tangle. Take care, and I'll see you next time.